everyone, and thank you for tuning in again. I am Katie Batesman, the Content Director at She Can Code, and today we're going to be discussing how to get started in a career in tech. In this episode, we're going to delve into why tech is a great career, why it's so exciting what it offers, how to really make your CV shine, the skills you need to brush up on, interview tips, and much more. So thankfully, I have the wonderful Donna Litt, co-founder and COO at Uvaro, here to help me today. Welcome, Donna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very welcomed.
Good. Thank you for coming along today. We have so much to get through and chat about. But before we get started, we'd love to hear a little bit about your background, if you can share that first, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I began my professional career in nonprofit fundraising and archaeology, if you can believe it.
Wow.
And yeah, I know.
I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. Never in a million years did I think I would go from hanging out in garbage piles that were old and full of bones to now being in tech. But here I am. And it turns out there's a number of very cross-functional skills that come from that program. So I was able to pivot my education, thankfully, and perspective into kind of the big, scary world of tech. And it just so happens that my humanities lens was very novel and much appreciated just at the time of making that transition. So I've stuck around and have been making my career and making my way forward there ever since. I first transitioned into tech, it was back in 2011. And what I was building at the time was actually an HR software. So it was called Tribe HR. That was the company that I had first joined as their very first customer expert, boots on the ground, helping HR professionals essentially manage their own workforce, all of their employees with their HR information system. That was the tech that I'd originally gotten started in. And it was that experience that really helped me understand just how critical it is to listen in this ecosystem, in this industry. And I know we'll talk a lot about skills, but listening is absolutely at its core. And that's in large part because people have all of their motivations, they need to accomplish all of their goals, and they ask for many things. And when you can listen to their intent and you listen to what it is that they're trying to accomplish, you become their support in that process and you help them achieve those objectives. And so it was working with HR professionals who I love dearly and helping them accomplish their goals, which are all about creating an incredible workplace, culture, transparency, implementing peer and public recognition so that employees can do better work. It was helping them kind of create these worlds for themselves in their own companies that helped me understand just the importance of the customer and the customer voice. And so fast forward to 2017, we sold that company to a company called NetSuite, which was then purchased by another company called Oracle. And so the founding team, when we had kind of seen that journey through, got back together and said, what tools can we create today? What can we do now to help, again, empower individuals in the workplace to do their jobs better and create a sense of autonomy and have more control over their outcomes. And we did not start with Uvaro by any stretch. We actually, like any good tech founding team, started with AI, as one does. And so built a chat bot that ultimately helped sales teams. And it was listening to the customers and pulling those threads, the same as we did before, that ultimately got us to Uvaro today, which is now we provide a membership to professionals who are looking to grow their careers in the tech industry. And so we've got about 70 employees, hundreds of members who we support in everything from getting their very first job to their first salary increase, to their first promotion, to their second job and their third job, et cetera. That's what we do today.
Amazing. And is there anything that you learned along the way in terms of being an entrepreneur and you didn't only transition over to the tech industry, you also launched a business. So is there anything, that you learned along the way that you wish somebody had told you?
Yes, I did not fully appreciate just how much change is happening in tech right now. I know that in full transparency, I got pulled into the industry by an advocate and an ally, my own brother, who's a software engineer from the University of Waterloo. He studied computer engineering there, and he'd always, been on about the internet. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to go dig in the dirt. And eventually I said, oh, okay, there's personal motivations and everything like that involved. But I ended up transitioning into the industry, and right away, I was just astonished by the pace of change. And I think more importantly, how much has yet to be defined. And so when I speak with individuals about things that they might not know, is one, absolutely the change that you're experiencing as soon as you begin to, do research or step your toe into the industry, that is normal and it is scary, but it is also opportunity, because never before have we been able to make as much of an impact. And I say we, I mean, in terms of gender diversity and helping to drive these agendas forward, because there's so much that's ill-defined. And the fear is that if we do not participate in driving forward those agendas, while it is so, amorphous and it's in a state of change, we will miss out on that opportunity. And the future that will get created will continue to exclude critical voices. And so certainly, I think just the state of change is something that I've learned and become accustomed to, but had no idea getting in.
Yeah. Was that a draw? Now you're in, would you say that actually that's, a good draw for people to come to the tech industry, that there is always change, and you don't have to sit in your career and feel like, you won't move forward. You always have to have that mindset of learning, I suppose.
Yeah. I love the question, and we're always talking internally about change management. And so I'm laughing as well because it's so topical. I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword in some cases. Change is the only constant, but it is also terrifying. And so there's absolutely, I think it's attractive for people to know that there's upward mobility, to know that, there's an opportunity to drive forward some of the values that you might represent, to be able to help support, the future of work and help shape it in a way that is more productive and inclusive for populations and individuals in the future. I think that's all so exciting. And then there's the personal gains that come with it of, seeing those salary increases and overcoming those challenges. But I think on the flip side, becoming comfortable operating in such a state of change is a very real challenge. And everybody comes forward with their own relationship to technology and change. And it's colorful, right? We don't all process it the same way. And so you might first be attracted to the industry because it's changing state, and in practice, the way it feels might be quite problematic and intimidating for somebody who has yet to develop the tools to adapt. And so I'd say, yes, absolutely, it's attractive, and it should, of course, be, because that's where opportunity is. However, it should be thought about with prudence and recognizing your own current state and developing tools to help ensure that you're resilient in that space.
Yeah, and I think as well, those of us that work in the industry, we know the draws and we know what is exciting about the industry. I hear a lot, and people that have transitioned into tech, they tend to say the money actually was a really big draw, and that there are good salaries within the tech industry, and lots of other things, like you don't have to be present in an office. That's not always the case with lots of industries. So you can be flexible in technology, and that you get to work across lots of different sectors that you never even would have imagined. Is there, anything else? I mean, you mentioned the change, obviously, and the fast pace of the industry. Was there anything at the time where you thought, the tech sector is definitely the one for me?
Yeah, I think also the openness and underlying idealism that exists. I think perhaps, I would be surprised if they were unrelated, but because there is a state of change, it attracts individuals who are looking to create a better future. And that just has a sense of idealism and optimism to it that doesn't always exist in all industries. And so for me, I think it was, that part was very exciting, the change aspect, but then it was also recognizing that these people who are innovating the space, they may not have all the answers, but absolutely they have the ideals and the desire to create a future that is better and more inclusive. And it doesn't always, translate into the best possible version of that. But that just means that there's opportunity for more voices to help make sure that it lands, that all of these outcomes land the way that we want them to. And so I think that underlying optimism that exists within the ecosystem is very attractive, and certainly something that pulled me here as well.
Did you have the thought before you came in that to work in tech you have to be technical, you have to been through a computer science degree, obviously you had a lot of training but in a completely different area, so was that a turn off? Did you sort of think, I'm not going to be welcomed in the industry because I'm not technical?
Yeah, I never actually encountered. So short answer would be no, I did not have that preconceived notion. I think it's probably because I had that family member who was saying, you should come, be here, right? So I had the education, the opportunity to know that there are so many roles in a technology company that do not require that expertise. However, I didn't fully appreciate what that would be like and how I would feel perhaps excluded by not having those skills until I joined. Because there are very specific ways of problem solving that engineers take, that people that are math minded or science educated. There are very clear ways of doing work and arriving at a solution that have rules and systems. And those same rules and systems aren't necessarily applied or talked about in arts-based education. There's different rules, there's different ways of solving problems. And when you are a minority in that space where everybody's following the same set of rules, using the same language, knowing how the equations work, you're a minority who does not have that information. It takes a long time to, one, see it for what it is, and then two, figure out how to navigate it, and then help others see it as well, because it's not one-sided. It needs to take all parties to acknowledge that that's a real thing, and then figure out the best way to establish shared language after that. And so going into it, I did not, but perhaps naively, when I got into it and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Why am I so frustrated all the time? No one's listening to me. I think I learned then the benefit that would have come had I had technical skills, but ultimately no regrets.
Yeah, and you mentioned technical skills there, but they're also, we talked right at the beginning about, making sure that you can go into an environment where you're used to, a fast pace, for instance, in technology. Are there any other skills you think that are needed for a tech career? Obviously, there are lots of soft skills in addition to technical skills.
Yeah, I think, joining this industry requires that you practice a lot of agency. And so that's autonomy, that's decision-making, that's taking in a lot of different instructions and data points and synthesizing it and making a good choice. And that's not often talked about. And so the skills that kind of feed into that ability are everything from listening to critical thinking, empathy, curiosity, having that sense of ownership. Those are all such critical skills. And that's really so that you don't just get that first job. It's so that you then keep that job and then grow into the next role and continue to see that growth and development, because so critically those soft skills right now are needed to be able to shape environments where more people can participate.
I always think you pick up the best skills within startups as well. And having worked at a couple myself, I think having that opportunity when I was younger to work at startups, I don't think I would have moved forward as quickly as I did if I'd gone into a corporate. And to be honest, once you've been in a few startups and then you find yourself in a corporate, you quickly think this isn't for me.
I love that anecdote. I went through that exact same journey. I'd love to hear your story. When we sold our business, I very quickly learned that I loved that autonomy and the ability to make change happen. And as soon as you join a big company, which we did through the acquisition, it was just different skills that I was much less interested in spending time on than the ability to move at the pace that I wanted. So ended up leaving 12 months to the day, much to my brother's chagrin. I don't think he saw it coming, which is something that we talk about from time to time. But yeah, that was that. I agree with your comments.
Yeah, everything it slows, doesn't it? Once you're in a corporate, and the fast pace of a startup is really good fun, because there's nobody, not is there, only nobody in your way. There's nobody to do that job, so you find yourself doing lots of different jobs because there's nobody else there to do it, and we need to get moving, which is just super fun to be part of. And yeah, I absolutely loved being part of a startup, and finding the right startup for you is really good fun. I think a lot of our ladies as well, in the majority of our community, are first and second jobbers. And I think when you're young, you don't always think, oh, I'll join a startup, or it can be quite worrying to join, a company that perhaps doesn't have a lot of stability. at first. So, hopefully a lot of our second jobbers have sort of figured out through their networks as they grow their networks, actually, that your career will expand a lot faster and accelerate much faster than if you get lost within a big company. How can people really make their CV stand out to potential employers? Is there anything that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, we certainly speak about a lot with our membership base. First and foremost, if you're not thinking about how you're using video, you absolutely should consider it. It's such a unique way to personalize your outreach, and there's a billion free tools out there that can really help you create your own video, create your personalized message, and all of a sudden just demonstrate your whole suite of skills so quickly and stand out from the group. So that's absolutely one tip. There's also our Alex Sparks. If you ever speak with her, she's our head of career services and coaching at Uvaro, and she'll say clear, concise, engaging. So whatever you put out there, make sure it's clear, concise, and engaging. And that's absolutely true. But I think the two most kind of behind the scenes tips that I would recommend, I'd say those are kind of low hanging fruit. Behind the scenes tips, number one, before submitting any application, understand your motivations. Why you believe that you and this company are aligned is so important, because one, it forces the hard work of actually reflecting and thinking through and doing the research, but then two, it shows up in your language and the way that you communicate. So that's so critically important. That's the hard invisible work that we all need to do, but never spend enough time on. And then if you can, this kind of the second behind the scenes tip, so to speak, when you're speaking, whether that's submitting your CV, or it's approaching a recruiter, whichever during the process, being able to align your skills to the company's goals and objectives and their customer base. Do the research to determine who they're serving, what it is they're trying to help their customers with. And when you do design your CV and speak to the recruiters and everything during the interview process, lining up your skills with how you can help the company achieve its objectives for the customer is so valuable. And it very quickly shows them that you are tactically aligned and capable of being able to do that. And so it can serve you very well when applying.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about a video there, which is a brilliant idea. I think we get hung up sometimes, don't we, we hear about red flags, things that you shouldn't do on your CV, obviously spelling mistakes, you've got all of those things on your mind. Is my CV too long? But perhaps we don't focus enough on how to showcase our personalities, not just our skills and qualifications. And a video, in this day and age where we're always sharing something like that across social media, why wouldn't we think of sharing that in our job application as well? That's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also scalable, because if you create a really quick video about yourself that speaks to those motivations, then you don't need to go out of your way to personalize it too much every time. You can personalize the email copy, but that video, have it be just speaking about your motivations and what it is you're looking to accomplish, then you can use it in multiple places. What's your why? That's what we talk about, being able to succinctly say your why. And that's very powerful.
Yeah, and actually that leads me on to my next question about experience, because if you don't have the necessary experience, just submitting actually a video to show your personality and what you're like, it would really help your application, just to show that you might be quite warm-natured, you might be very easy to get on with, which sometimes is so much more important than whether or not you have the necessary skills. So in terms of experience, you came from a different industry and moved into tech. Is experience necessary? And how do you gain it if you don't have any?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and there's the answer is varied, because there's so many different roles within the tech ecosystem. But I mean, broadly speaking, if you take a skills-based approach, so what are the skills that you've gained, and you apply with that in mind, then experience is much less necessary, and not necessary in a lot of cases. And so what that just means is digging deep and identifying what experience you actually have. And so oftentimes, we'll work with newcomers and they don't have that, Canadian work experience. And so they're blocked in a lot of different ways. And so what's important in those scenarios is to go back and say, okay, well, what experience are you bringing to the table? And work through and identify what skills it is that you developed along the way. Communication, for example, discovery, asking questions, leading with empathy. These might be skills that you gained in a different country, in a different industry, but then tailoring your resume and your application to showcase those skills is how you can overcome those objections, because you're always going to run into the poor recruiting practice of just not accepting an application because there's not that related experience. But the reality is the workplace is changing, recognizing that those skills do matter more. And so leading with those skills is how you can overcome the experience question or challenge, because you don't need a job in tech to be able to break into the tech industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And say your application does get through to a shortlist and you make an interview. Do you have any tips for interviewing, or anything that you've learned that you thought, I wish I hadn't done that? You know, it takes a few interviews, doesn't it? You need a few practice goes.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair. So I do have tips, but I love what you just said, because it takes practice, which means interview as much and as frequently as you can. People get discouraged when they send out 1, 2, 3, 5 applications and they don't get the response back. We have people sending out hundreds, and that's not to say that hundreds is necessary, but recognizing that it is a pipeline. It is your first sales job, is, you know, to sell yourself, and so you have to run the numbers. So I think your comment around practice is king. I think that really resonates, because you're absolutely right. That helps a lot. But I think, you know, outside of that, doing your research before you have a conversation, even if it's just a little bit, so that you can make that conversation relevant. The minute the conversation strays into that realm of irrelevancy, you lose the attention, you lose the opportunity to showcase yourself in the best light. So I think that's so important. And then the second is to really be intentional about the questions that you ask. So if you adopt the perspective of what questions do I need answered for me to succeed in this role, if you can adopt that perspective and then develop your list of questions, prioritize that list of questions, and then be intentional about asking them, then you will stand out from other candidates.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Bringing up there the practice. I think as well, it's especially when you're younger and you start interviewing after you've graduated. I think it's learning not to take it to heart when you don't get the role or you don't make it to the next round, because you're right. It does take practice, and I think it's just taking on board that you learn from every interview, even if you think, maybe I shouldn't have said that, then you obviously don't say it in your next one. And a lot of companies, unfortunately, don't always give feedback either. So you're sort of going into the next one blindly. I think once you start relaxing a little bit more, and it's more, you know, becomes a chat with the interviewer as well about what you can learn from the company and whether it's right for you as well, which as a graduate is very hard, because you're sort of thinking, I just want to get on the first team that will take me, but you're not always thinking, you know, is this right for me, and in the long term, would I stay here for several years, instead of thinking, actually I have to go after 12 months. So do you have any advice for a new graduate that's looking to get into the industry?
Yeah, I think across the board, I'm sure I'm not the only person to say this, but develop your network. You know,
yeah,
it's as simple as reaching out to somebody who's in the industry and just asking, can I hear your stories that I can learn from it? You don't need to show up with a million questions or have it be, you know, a record-breaking quality interview or anything like that, or there's none of that, you know, quality that needs to happen. All you need to do is show up, be curious, and engage, be present enough to engage and lean into the conversation. And you will learn from that experience. And you'll likely also get an offer of help. Realistically, if you've spent the time listening to somebody's story and you showed curiosity, they're probably going to come out the other end and think you're awesome and want to help you. And so it's as simple as just reaching out and asking. And I mean, even if any of your listeners today are interested in reaching out to me, I encourage them all to, you know, LinkedIn, email, Donna@uvaro.com, absolutely, to just ask, to listen or ask for help. It's so important to do, because that is how you accelerate. That is how you learn the things that aren't on blog posts or on, social feeds. It's just how you learn the real human way of moving forward. So I would say develop your network. It sounds scary. It's the thing that our parents were telling us, and their parents were probably telling them, but it's real.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the things that you learn from your network as well, just those small conversations that you have with people, and you sometimes they turn out to be the best advice you've ever heard, and it's a small conversation that you really didn't see coming. I remember speaking to a lady years ago, and she said to me, when she describes her job, when somebody says to her, "What do you do for a living?" she doesn't go into detail about what she does every day. She worked in sales. She headed up a sales team for a very large tech company. And instead of detailing all of the little things, she just said, "I find the shortest route to the money." And that's all she says, which it just absolutely describes what she does without having to say, I run this sales team and going through the numbers and everything. And I think it's just finding a way to be able to showcase your skills and to be proud of them as well, and to show your personality. I think even if something funny happens on an interview, then you're always remembered as, that girl that happened. You don't get forgotten because something hilarious happened during the interview, because you can quite easily disappear in, amongst 10 other candidates and not be remembered. So as long as it's not too wild.
Right. Yeah. Boundaries, right? Yeah.
Yes,
No, that's
yes. Boundaries.
that's an excellent. Yeah. It's an excellent point. And, I think it ties back to what you said before, interview practice, right? It's getting to that place of speaking confidently, but I think it's also recognizing that you can depersonalize it, because, if you do not end up with that job, chances are it's much less about you than it is about the other candidates that applied in that process. And so the more you can kind of depersonalize, show up authentically, like you mentioned, the more likely it is you'll be remembered. And that's really, really what you're looking to do, is to stand out as somebody who can do the job based on the skills and the way that you showed up.
Yeah. And we are running out of time, and I have one last question that I want to ask you. So obviously we are a community of females in technology, and we know the tech sector has a shortage of women. So what more can be done to encourage the female talent pipeline?
Yeah, it's a really great question, because there are so many things that could be encouraged, that could encourage the pipeline. But I think, at the end of the day, the tech industry is about growth and opportunities. And so it's got a lot going for it. Doesn't have everything going for it, but no industry does. No industry is perfect. What tech does enable you to do is take charge of your own growth, increase your total income. It allows you to impact change, small and big. There's so much green field that has yet to really be explored, that so many industries do not offer. And so I think if there's one thing that we could be doing to encourage just that talent pipeline, is to share that, explain that, take the time to help individuals on a one-on-one basis just understand that there's that much opportunity, and shape it frame it up rather that way. I think that's something that we can each do, is to take that responsibility to help make sure that it's communicated that way, because if it's just communicated as like, where the engineers go, it's not just females. No one's going to want to go over there. Yeah. But so it needs to be communicated for what it is, as opposed to through that very narrow lens. And I think if we can begin communicating it that way, then people will come, women will come, females will come, those who self-identify, and we'll get more diversity within, I think. Absolutely.
Yeah, as we've mentioned on this already, I think those of us that work in technology are so aware of the benefits of working in this industry. And I always find it such a shame when I speak to ladies in tech, and the first thing I say is, how did you end up in tech? And they say, we fell into technology. And I thought, there are so many of us that say that, and it would be lovely to start hearing that women have chosen to come into the tech industry because it's a great place to work and they know all the benefits. So you're right, it's just communicating that. I think we do have a bit of a problem as an industry, communicating the benefits of working here. So But I could talk all afternoon on this, as you can see, but we are out of time already. So thank you, Donna, so much for sharing your experience with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful. I've truly enjoyed the conversation and appreciate the chance to share.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming. And to everybody listening, as usual, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.